Yo, what's good? It's your man, 100 Grand Ross with The Rock Never Stops. Today I want to do a video about the Brooklyn Nets. And damn it, they are back. They are back. If you enjoy this video, smash the like button for me, hit subscribe and the bell for notifications. Yo, it's something beautiful to sit back and be able to say, I told you so. I told you so. I told all of y'all. This has been a hell of a season, a very competitive, extremely competitive NBA season with so much parity, so much talent. There's probably been more talent in the NBA today than there probably ever has been. And I'm talking top down, right? From almost every position. You have so many all-star worthy players that are going to miss the all-star game because there's just too many talented players throughout the league and throughout their conference. You have so many teams that last year were title contenders who are middle of the pack playoff teams. You have so many players who were used to being at the top and are finding themselves looking up at other guys flying past them, i.e. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and even a LeBron James, right? And all of a sudden you see Zion Williamson flying to the top, Ja Morant. You have guys like Stephen Curry dominating, and then all of a sudden you see Damian Lillard make his return, and you see other really talented players beginning to compete and say, hey, I'm just as good as you. And even though they may not be, the way they're playing says they have an argument. Now, what does this have to do with the Brooklyn Nets? The Brooklyn Nets are also competing in this extremely talented NBA that we have today. And at the beginning of the season, a lot of people jumped on them. They jumped on the bandwagon of kicking somebody while they're down, right? Thrashing them before they could actually see things play out. And if you noticed, I was real chill about it. I was real chill. If anything, I took an optimistic approach. I said, look, they're still dealing with Steve Nash and his incompetence and trying to figure out when they can move on from him. They still aren't healthy. Ben Simmons wasn't back initially. They were sitting out Kyrie Irving. They didn't have their guard play back with Joe Harris and Seth Curry, right? They were lacking a major amount of depth, right? T.J. Warren was still out, all right? And they were still figuring out who they were going to be. And they struggled mightily initially, like they should have. And it's okay that they struggled early. But I cautioned most of you to not be presumptuous about what this team was, who they were going to be, as they continue to work their way into this season. Now, similarly, you can say the same thing with a team like the Los Angeles Lakers. I told y'all that they weren't going to continue to shoot that badly from the field and that they were going to work some things out. And they have, and all of a sudden you see them playing better and better. But even more so than them, right? The Brooklyn Nets are playing incredible basketball. And I want to point to several different aspects that we can look at to really understand what has been the multiple catalysts for their turnaround. One, I want to say the firing of Steve Nash and the replacing him with Jacques Vaughn. Look, Jacques Vaughn, I'm not going to come out and say right now he's the next J.B. Bickerstaff or even Tyronn Lue, right? I'm not going to say he's the next great coach, but I will say there is something to have a coach who has been around the league, who understands the game, who has been sitting on the bench as a top assistant for several years. The last 3 to 5 years, he has been the top assistant for winning teams, for teams that have featured superstar players whom he has been able to learn not just how to manage a superstar talent or multiple superstar talents, but also how to game plan around them, right? The skills that he has been able to garner from working in that position are tremendous, and we're seeing it play out today, right? Initially, you saw some of the turnaround in terms of the different schemes, how they were utilizing certain players. But one of the measurements that I've always pointed out of a great coach is their ability to coach top down, to coach 1 through 15, and to be able to get the most out of their talent on the entire roster, not just with the top end players, not just you're winning like a Frank Vogel was able to do, where he was able to win when LeBron James and Anthony Davis were playing at their peak in the bubble. But then when they weren't at their peak, he struggled to be able to create schemes that allowed him to maximize the rest of the guys. Right? And so this is something that I always point out. This is a measuring rod of a great coach, or at least a competent coach. right? He's not about necessarily playing harder. He's not a rah-rah coach like a Tom Thibodeau and just pushing his guys and grinding his guys and trying to be able to outplay other teams by just outworking them. He's actually utilizing schemes, X's and O's. He's utilizing strategies, things that he sees other teams are doing and implementing them, right? He shows some variance where he says, if I have this type of a lineup, I'm going to do this. And if I have that type of a lineup, I'm going to do that. We saw this in spades the other night when you had the Brooklyn Nets sitting their starting lineup and playing the backups, guys who were getting a bunch of DNPs, playing in the G League prior, and all of a sudden they were starting and they were getting featured roles on this team. And what does he do? He goes into Indiana, playing against a team that is in the playoff hunt and playing some really quality basketball led by Tyrese Halliburton and Miles Turner. And he goes in there starting Edmund Sumner, starting Patty Mills, starting a bunch of guys like Kessler Edwards, right? Day'Ron Sharpe, guys that are getting DNPs night after night after night. And what do? They go in there and they grind out a win. They didn't go in there and just blow them out the water by, catching them on their heels, and those guys had underestimated them and, weren't prepared for the game. No, they were behind most of that game and had to make a late comeback, which shows the grit, shows the sense of a team identity in terms of how they wanted to play and how they were able to compete with one another, trust in one another. There's a certain team buy-in and chemistry that they have. It also helps that a lot of those guys getting DNPs have also been on the team for the past 2 to 3 seasons, right? When you look at a Kessler Edwards and a Day'Ron Sharpe and a Cam Thomas, Edmund Sumner, right? These guys have been around and they kind of have a young nucleus core, right? So there's a certain amount of chemistry that they have playing together that allow them to compete at a high level. But then you see the return of guys like Yuta Watanabe, right? One of the best three-point shooters in the NBA, right? Who's had a spectacular season, a 6'9" forward, who's athletic, high basketball IQ, does great moving off the ball, great team player as well, right? And you see Jacques Vaughn utilize them to be able to maximize their talent, and they come out with the win. But that's not where it stops for the Brooklyn Nets. You also see Kevin Durant having one of his best seasons over the past 6 to 7 years, averaging over 30 points a game, shooting over 50% from the field. He is absolutely dominating the NBA right now. And if you look at what Kyrie Irving is also doing in his complete dominance, and I mean complete dominance, Nike is going to cry about missing what he brought to that team. When he goes to another shoe company like Li Ning, I think that's what it's called, the one that D Wade is sponsored by, and Klay Thompson, right? Or if he goes to some other place like Reebok, wherever he goes, his shoe is going to sell out. He's one of the most exciting players the game has ever seen, and he is balling in a contract year. Brooklyn is going to have to pay that man. They're going to have to pay that man every bit of what he knew that he was worth. And now when you see these two clicking, and you see the return of guys like T.J. Warren, you see the emergence of Yuta Watanabe, right? You see Seth Curry finally finding his footing a little bit. Joe Harris being able to acclimate himself. And all of a sudden, the team that used to be too young, and Kevin Durant was saying, how am I supposed to win with a bunch of young guys like this? All of a sudden, now he has a bunch of veterans who know how to play and win at a high level, right? Now you see even guys like Markieff Morris playing better, right? You see even Nicholas Claxton beginning to emerge because veterans know how to set people up. They know what to look for. They make that extra pass. They know what's going to help the team in the long run. And so young guys who have a lot of talent but might be struggling with other young guys, all of a sudden they're going to look a whole lot better when they're playing with other veterans. And that's what we're seeing from Nicholas Claxton. All right, we're seeing him emerge because he's able to play with guys who know how to play. They can hide some of his deficiencies. They can actually add to his strengths. And that's another aspect of what we're seeing. But I will say that one of the greatest aspects is that this team is beginning to believe in themselves as a unit, right? It's not to say that they didn't believe in one another before, but most veterans understand that you're not going to win with young guys. I've done videos on this constantly in the past where I have to explain that you don't win with young guys. And so Kevin Durant having to go out there with Edmund Sumner and Kessler Edwards and these guys, he understood that in the biggest games, he was not going to have not just the firepower, but the know-how, the IQ that allows him to compete in those strenuous, highly competitive situations because they haven't been there before. They don't know what it's like to win at this level in those types of games. But now he does. Joe Harris is back. Seth Curry is back. TJ Warren, who's a walking bucket, is back. And I think TJ Warren is going to be an underestimated component as he gets his legs in terms of being able to rest Kevin Durant so you can minimize his minutes and help him to recover because he played heavy minutes in the early part of the season. Right? Kyrie Irving's return and his acclimation and complete dominance of the league right now is also going to add to allowing Kevin Durant to rest that much more as well, to get easier shots. And what you're seeing is a team coming together because they now have the right components. They have the coaching. They have the veteran leadership. They have the shooting. You have guys who know what to do. They have the know-how. And now they have the depth. They have great depth. But as always, I want to know what you all think. What do you think are the key reasons for this team's turnaround? Let me know what you think that their outlook is going to be. They're now fourth in the Eastern Conference, right? I think they got a couple nights off. We're going to see where they end up by the end of the week, the end of the month. But I think that this is a team that's going to continue to rise because they have what you can't teach. They have what's hard to find, and that is a superstar. And in fact, they have two. And I can't wait to see what they do moving forward. I'm going to holler at y'all next time. Get at me in the comment section, like and subscribe. And I'm going to get at y'all later. Peace.